Okay, looks like it's going now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
All right. Well, hello, Dr. Irie.
Well, hello, Dr. Winter.
It's
How are
good
you?
to it's good to see you.
Same. Glad to be live.
Amen. Amen.
I just want to, I'm going to look on Facebook to make sure that we are live indeed. Oh, yep, there we go.
There we are.
There
All
we
right.
are. Well, welcome everyone. We are here for our Womanist Bible exploration, and we are so fortunate to have none other than Reverend Dr. Winter Laws, who will be facilitating our exploration tonight. We are still exploring Dr. Renita J. Weems, What Matters Most, 10 Lessons on Living Passionately from the Song of Solomon. And so we invite you to sit back and enjoy and ask questions. I have my trusty phone here, so if we have any questions or comments in the chat on Facebook or YouTube, I'll see them and I'll make sure that Dr. Winter sees them as well. So, Dr. Winter, how do you want me to proceed?
Oh, if you pull up the presentation, that'll be pretty
Oh, that
awesome.
that might help, huh?
Just a little.
All right, hold on just a minute and I'll get it right for you. Okay.
All right. We can start with that slide right there. We don't have to go to the first one. So welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you were able to join this particular exploration. As Dr. Irie has just shared, it says 10 lessons in living passionately from the Song of Solomon. What matters most? My chapter is the balance chapter, and I picked this one specifically because I actually struggle with it the most in terms of me balancing my life. So I wanted to experience what Renita J. Weems had to share, Reverend Dr. Renita J. Weems had to share. And so if you'll just walk with me through this a little bit, this is the first slide, the second slide, please. We're going to be talking about balance. And if you read the Song of Solomon, you probably picked up on a few clues. I That's the first thing that I wanted to just chat through. The second thing I wanted to chat about was foxes in the vineyard. I was like, what is that about? I mean, I had to go deep into that. It made me really, really think. And then rest, recharge, and rejuvenate is another topic that we're going to touch base on. And then balance your life. What does that look like for you to balance your life? And then, just out of curiosity, that's something I was thinking about when I was reading it. What's missing from not just the chapter, but from the book, right? Sorry, what's missing from this chapter from Renita J. Weems? I'd love to ask her these questions, but she's not on this particular call, so it's all good. So first was reading the Song of Solomon. There were a couple of quotes in here. If you On that first page, it says, "Her image." Oh, not yet, doctor. Not. It says her image as a respectable woman that is improved upon marriage. That's the first thing that caught my eye in that balance at the bottom of the first page. It makes her respectable to be married, but it does not improve her credibility as a person. That to me, I was like, well, okay, so what if you're not married? Then that becomes a whole thing. And then at the end of that paragraph, it says, nothing is more shocking to the system than to discover that love has bound you to marriage in a way that he is not. And I had to kind of pause for myself on that. What does that mean? it meant to me when I read it that because you're married as a woman, you have certain responsibilities, certain roles or things you do, but the man that you marry does not. And so he's looked at a certain way, being the head of household, if you will, and but you're his, I'll use the word spouse, that appears to do everything, but that's a whole nother story. Um, and so in the middle of that chapter, in the middle of that page, it says, love is woman's work. Love is women's work. And I just kind of highlighted that. I thought, you know,
Wow.
so that's why some of us are all tired all the time. It's our work, it's our job. Now, I'm not married, so I can't claim that. So when I looked at this, I looked at it from a whole context perspective as to, you know, what my mother did or my grandmother did or my aunts and my uncles. Love is women's work. I'm sure y'all, some of y'all don't have to think about that too hard, but I had to think about that. And right after that, the next sentence says, we are expected to make sacrifices, make the necessary sacrifices to make relationships work and to keep the home running smoothly. Now, now keep in mind, my chapter is balance, right? So I'm making sacrifices. We as women are making sacrifices. We're making sacrifices, not just only to make the home run right, but you know, to I'm gonna use the words keep the man happy, to keep the relationship going, and all of this kind of stuff. And in a lot of our cases, in today's world, we also work. We're also raising children. So this scale on this on that is reflective of balance. This was the best picture I could think of in terms of what balance looked like for us, and the different things that's being carried on each side. And so again, it really made me think. Now, not those are just the quotes that got me started, but then when I looked at the book itself, it kind of talks about and celebrates love and intimacy, not necessarily the work. It celebrates the love and intimacy. And again, when I continued to study and I continued to look at some things, I thought about it in the context of who's telling the story? Who's telling this story? And the way it's written, it kind of centers it kind of centers the male perspective because there's a male person writing it, and where but here's the good news. The good news is there is a woman's voice in it, and so that is an optimistic perspective from as I read it, because there's so many other times when we read these books of the Bible, it does not center, it does not even have the, in this case, it doesn't have the woman's name, it does not share her perspective. So so there are some good things that come out of this in terms of in individuals' wisdom, romantic love, and in some context, personal fulfillment. But then let's come back to the topic, balance. What does it look like to balance when when love is woman's work?
Wow, that's a great question. What does balance look like when love is woman's work? That's great. That's a question. Hmm.
So I'm not sure if there are any questions out there, but we definitely want to pause. And if you have some questions that you want to share, please put them on Facebook or YouTube. And I will do my best to answer them. And if y'all want to answer the questions too, that'll be a good thing, right? This is an interactive exploration. Next slide, Dr. Ari. So, so one of the things I begin to think about when in this chapter, like on the, I think it's the very next page, it kind of starts out talking about foxes. And And I am a very literal person. So I was like, okay, what is a fox? What does that have anything to do with this chapter? How does a fox roll into all of this? And so that's when my research had to start. And then it says in the vineyard. I know y'all don't know this, but I love dessert wine. Not the dry wine, not the semi this or the semi that. I love dessert wine. So I can imagine that foxes and other animals will uh, try to procure some sweet grapes. And so, but I wanted to know what did what does the foxes in the vineyard represent? So in my studying, when I kind of was like, okay, now we're doing womanist work here. That's number one, right? We're looking at this from a womanist perspective, from one of the greatest womanist preachers out there with Reverend Dr. Renita J. Weems. So I had to do my research. What does that kind of look like for us to see foxes in the vineyard? So I'm pausing a second. This is what they call a dramatic pause. So when I looked it up, what I found was that it says womanist theology calls for catching the foxes, actively dismantling the barriers to love and to justice. Something to think about. Because really, I mean, if there's a fox in the vineyard eating the grapes, they're taking away from they're taking away from, I don't want to call it profits, but the good grapes that you're supposed to either make jelly with or wine with or whatever it is you do with grapes. And so as think about that in terms of from a fox perspective, they could also be taking away your joy. They could also be taking away your liberation. And when you think about that, your flourishing, your joy, those are your divine gifts. If a fox is taking that away, there's something that we need to engage in and deal with that stops the fox from doing that to us, right? So we need to become liberated. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Irie?
No, you're answering my thoughts or responding to my thoughts before I ask them. So yeah, keep going.
Okay. All right. One of the other things I found was is that foxes, they're destructive forces. How many times have we encountered people that see what we're doing, we're flourishing, and become destructive? And whether or not it be a patriarchal, whether or not it be even an internalized oppression. Because like you think about it in some context, it's like, okay, I got this vineyard, I got some sweet grapes. Oh, I am flourishing. And then you start to second guess yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now what does that do to your balance?
Mm-hmm.
You may even work harder. You might even say I need to do more in the context of producing more grapes because it's not going to be enough because these foxes are going to come along. That's going to disturb the growth and the sweetness of your vineyard.
So I do have a question, Dr. Winter. So in the context of the book and the particular and this text, right? What do you think Weems is saying, or what do you think the writer is saying is the vineyard? What is the vineyard?
Yeah, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the book and let's
Yeah.
let's pull up let's pull that up. It says, like at the top of page 68, I think it is, it says, who and what are the foxes? It says, and she has in here explicitly, foxes are pests to those who plant vineyards. Grapes are delectable treats on the landscape that the tiny, clever, feisty, quick scavengers find hard to pass up.
Do you have the particular passage in Song of Solomon where it talks about the foxes?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you read that, please?
Uh, well, let's hold
And
on.
tell us where it is.
It's chapter 2, verse 15.
No, I mean, where in the Bible, in the Song of Solomon
Song
is,
of Solomon, chapter 2,
okay,
verse 15.
okay, hold on. Okay, Song of Solomon. I'm right typing that in the chat. Chapter 2, verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and thank you.
And go
Great
ahead and
question.
read that. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
am. I
Okay.
am. I have the CSB version of the
Okay.
Bible. I think I could change it to CEB in a second. Catch, catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards. For our vineyards are in bloom. That's the scripture. Let me change to the CEB version. Or because NRSV, NRSV, UE. Catch the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom. And so, as I read it and thought about it and thinking about our vineyards, I think like the vineyards are us.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, the vineyards are us. And when we're in blossom, we're doing well. There are things that are going on that's, again, that we are uh, being successful in interacting with people. Our business is growing. Our family is doing a lot of different things. Then there's a fox that comes along. And in this picture, the first picture I had drawn had like 2 or 3 foxes. I'm like, I don't want all those foxes in my vineyard. But there are times when things, I call it the wheels fall off at work, the wheels fall off at home, the wheels fall off at church. And we do have maybe multiple foxes roaming our vineyard, and especially in our brain. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I also think in this particular passage, I want to know what you think about this. Do you think also that the vineyard represents the relationship, right? Because she says, the person says, um, um, catch us the foxes, the little foxes, right, that spoil the vineyards. And so could it also be talking about, the things that happen in relationships, that particularly intimate partner relationships,
Oh,
that
well,
that can cause harm to the relationship?
I think you're right, because if you read that next little piece, that next little segment, it says, for our vineyards
Mm-hmm.
are in blossom.
Yes. So
So,
it's like our love is flourishing,
yeah,
right? Our
yes.
relationship is blossoming, it's flourishing. And so we gotta pay attention,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right, to those things that can get in the way um, of that flourishing, that can undermine the flourishing of the relationships.
Right.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
where it could actively identify and dismantle barriers to the love between the two people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely some scenarios there that it causes you to think, and that's the beauty of Renita J. Weems to me, is that um, the way she handles this text and allows us to think about. She has several scenarios in here around foxes, and it just again it made me kind of go. They're kind of pesky. It's a pesky, persistent disagreements between partners that outsiders sound like they have simple, easy solutions. But if the two people or two would just sit down and talk things out, but to the two people involved, it's a deeper matter. It's a question of all the needs and expectations and dreams each person brings into the marriage and fully expects the other person to meet. How many different times from a cultural perspective or spiritual or religious perspective, two people cross and their experiences of their parents, of their life, what they bring to the table causes some consternation after the what do you call it after the honeymoon. That's the terminology. After the
Yeah.
honeymoon.
You know what, Dr. Winter, that also made me think about? It made me think beyond intimate, loving relationships between two people when you to expand it to relationships in general with people, right? When you started talking about the things that people bring from their childhoods, things people bring from their parents, their families of origin, right? How many times do those things, maybe those traumas or unhealed hurts, how often do those get in the way of relationships with other people? Not even people that, we're intimately involved with, but people maybe that we have to work with, you know. We get triggered because, something somebody does reminds us of something that happened to us when we were children, or when we were in a past relationship. And so then we project our response is a projection on a person that had nothing to do with it, right? To me, I see that also as a fox, right?
It absolutely is. I was watching a segment last night of West Wing, and one of them was a military scenario, and another one was a societal issue. And they just kind of float back to back. And when I sent the clip to my nephew, it triggered something in him. He's like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what's going on?" Because of his experiences within his families, if you will. And so just even little clips. I remember some of the clips that you shared in a previous Bible study or exploration from, oh gosh, it was this guy who was who had this gosh, what was it? It, it was a club, like a nightclub, and I can't think of the name of it, but you were excited about that, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I don't know about that nightclub now. And what's going on in there. And that it had that pole where that girl was doing the thing with the pole and all this other stuff.
Probably that was probably from uh oh shoot, I know what you're talking about. I
Yeah,
can't.
but
Yeah.
but triggering, right? And just because I was watching it and hearing the story, now if we didn't have the relationship that we have, we'd probably be like, okay, that might be something going on there. But that's the beauty of our relationship. We could talk through it, we could walk through it, and that kind of thing. But everybody doesn't have that same relationship to be able to walk through things, and that's what this is kind of like about, right? You could have that fox where I'm gonna give you an example, and I guess it's probably too personal, but what I got whoopings
Same.
when I did some things, right? But some people say, well, that was too much. They shouldn't have done that. And I look at me now and I think, well, I think I turned out all right. But that could be a fox in somebody's That could be a fox for somebody else. It could be triggering.
Yeah, because I too got whoopings and I wish I hadn't because my response to it was, yeah, for me, it was abuse. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
there are other ways of getting your point across and disciplining and all of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
uh, which
I
is why,
learned that over time.
huh?
I learned that over time.
Yeah, which is why I like the way this verse reads, right? It says, catch us the foxes. So to me, that says that we have a responsibility to check those things, right? That there is a level of accountability
And
to
communication.
address, yeah, absolutely, to address um, those kinds of situations, right? As we grow, as we age, it comes a point where we can't just, well, and we do, where I would say where we ought not blame, okay, well, this how I was raised, or this was that experience. Okay, so but what you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
catch us the foxes. So do something about it. Take
Right.
responsibility. Take ownership for the foxes that have entered your vineyard.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So as you look at some of the other questions that are here, it says, how do we actively dismantle the barriers or deter the foxes in the identified question in number one? And I think we just got through I think we just got through talking about that in some context. And it's about communication. It's also about recognition that it is a fox.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't be in denial, right? That there is a fox here. There is some issues here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's good.
How does the theology of survival and communal flourishing challenge the belief that suffering is redemptive? Now, I thought about that question for myself and I just thought, are we meant to suffer? There are some theological beliefs that really think that we are meant to suffer.
Yep.
And yeah, and I'm not going to go too deep into that, but there's definitely a couple of people out there that are professing that from the pulpit. They're professing that in their friendships. They are pouring that into their children.
Oh, it's more than a couple, Dr. Winter.
Yeah.
Like it is. I mean, when you think about, well, yeah, it's more than a couple. It's an ideology. It's a theology. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does the theology of survival and communal flourishing challenge the belief that suffering is redemptive? And so as womanists, what we know is that we believe, and I guess I should speak for myself, believe that we're not only meant to suffer in this lifetime, we're meant to flourish. We're meant to flourish as individuals, we're meant to flourish as families and communities. And to me, when I see a lot of people thinking suffering is the way, sometimes their perspective on life is a bit challenging for me. Now, I'll be honest, I know it's going to be on the internet forever. I don't smile a lot, I don't laugh a lot, but when I do, I am enjoying it. But it doesn't mean I'm suffering or that I'm wallowing in some abyss, because I don't. It just means that that's just me. But when I do laugh and when I do smile, it's got to be really funny. It can't be Kevin Hart for me.
I've heard this quote, and it says, and I think I actually heard this also from a clinical psychologist. She said, pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice.
Oh, really? I like it.
Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. What does that say to you? What does that communicate to you? And then I'll share my thoughts about it.
I like that. Pain, and I'll just go to something that has been close to my heart, especially since we lost an uncle not too long ago. It hurts when you lose somebody that
Mm-hmm.
you love or that supported you or believed in you, and often would lift you up, especially if you were going through something. So that pain of grief does exist, just as an example. But the suffering piece, when I hear that about being a choice, so some of us can process grief fairly quickly. Some
Mm-hmm.
of us can. Uh, but some of us kind of stay there. Uh, Sometimes I think for the attention, they may not even recognize it. Uh, uh, but in this particular case, with regard to grief, in terms of suffering, you can stay there for a while, but you can choose to be happy that that person lived, that that person poured into you. You could go do what he would always do, which was he loved to play dominoes. So we as a family, that's exactly what we did after the service. We all played dominoes and we just had a good time. So that suffering piece, I do believe there's value in what she said. How
Yeah.
can you lift yourself up when you've gone through some pain?
Yeah. Um, like, of course, we don't ever want to minimize people who suffer like from oppression, um, you know, um, abuse, those kinds of things, right? Because suffering
Correct.
is real. People do suffer. I think in the context in which she was saying that, it was like what you said, right? Like, pain is an unavoidable reality of life. I heard
Yes.
Dr. Renita J. Weems one time say, pain is the dues we pay for living in this world, right? So pain is going to happen. But the suffering piece, it is and can be our mental response, our mental and emotional response to the pain, right? So that is what can cause the suffering. This same clinical psychologist talked about one of the keys to overcoming suffering is acceptance, not accepting the fact that or believing that I deserve what's happening, but accepting the reality that this is what's happening, right? Not being in denial about a thing, but accepting the reality, accepting the truth. Yes, he did walk out on me. Yes, I was abused as a kid. I'm not going to be in denial about that anymore. And so that relieves some of the mental anguish um, associated with the pain. So that's kind of how I see that, right? It is. I was telling my daughter just this week, we were talking about some things, and I said, baby, I said, a lot of this is a mindset thing. It's how you're thinking about the thing, not so much the thing, right? Because the thing did happen,
Correct.
but it's how you're processing it, how you're thinking about it, how we take something that happened and then we turn it in on ourselves, and so then we become bad or we become worthless, right? It's what happens in our mind. So that's kind of what I was thinking about that.
Yeah, and I like that. I know I had a situation where it was a breakup. It was pretty bad for me, but I processed it by writing, and I
Yeah,
got it out of my system.
there you go.
And then I went and played golf. I was good.
Mhm.
I couldn't for whatever reason that during that
Yeah,
time period I couldn't enjoy life, of which I like doing playing golf, because I was thinking like, okay, why'd that person leave me? Why'd this happen? Why'd that happen? But it was
yeah.
all in my brain. But once I wrote it down,
Yeah, that's a good point because like pain, suffering involves mental narratives, right? The thing we tell ourselves about what happened and why it happened, right?
right?
So sometimes it's about getting to a place where you can change the narrative about what happened.
That's a great point. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, then.
Keep going. Keep
Oh,
going. I'm
okay.
gonna, yeah.
You mean put them all in
Put
there?
them all up. Yeah.
Another one?
Now, I think there is one more.
Okay,
Yeah.
here we
And
go.
so, if you look, if anybody's looking at the screen right now, the uh, far right upper picture, that's her journaling, or that's me journaling. That the upper right, you see it, Dr. Irie?
I see a woman in a bathtub.
Go.
Oh, no, I got to move the thing was in the way. Okay, I
Okay.
see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The praying and writing in the journal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you look at the book and what she has, I was thinking, okay, let's discuss ways that she talks about ways to rest that are discussed in the book. But we don't have to. I mean, it's not a huge deal. But the point I think ultimately
Mm-hmm.
is that what ways do you rest? What ways do you take care of your mind? What ways do you take care of your body?
Mm-hmm.
Such that when you go through, when these foxes come, or
Mm-hmm.
when these things come, what does that look like? And I chose those pictures on purpose. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people love to, my sister actually loves to sit in a bathtub. I don't know if she does the whole candles thing, but she has her a book, and she just music and just rest. That's one of her ways to rest. So sorry, sis, I told the world. And then the other picture down there is the one below the lady in the tub is a counselor.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't have to be a counselor, a certified one, but a friend that you can talk to, somebody you can confide in that can help you process what happened
Mm-hmm.
to you. And then, of course, it also could be a counselor or someone that could give you uh, things to do to help you process what happened. And then several years ago, I just could not rest.
Mm-hmm.
Just my brain was just on. It just kept going and going and going, and I felt like I couldn't sleep for days. And then when I went to sleep, I would wake right back up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I really don't. I didn't go to the counselor for that, but I just couldn't rest. But when you could get rest, or when I finally was able to rest, things just looked brighter for me. Things were
Yeah.
was better because that uh, your body and your mind got a chance to look at things a little differently. Have you ever had any of these things that you would do, or maybe you do something different, Dr. Irie?
Oh, all of these things. Uh, we have something in common because journaling has saved my life. I'm sitting like my mind. And it's something that I, started doing like in my early 20s, um, that writing out my feelings and just like you said, getting it out of you, that is a practice that I have. And now I have like a journal on my phone, to where I can write in anytime, so certainly that. And lighting candles, maybe, and of course I have, bathed in with candles all around, but just candles, period, in the house, would, are soothing and calming for me. And of course, I've seen a therapist, uh, many years, um, but also have relationships with other women who have been healers for me. I remember hearing one time, another therapist said, sometimes all people need is somebody that they can really talk to and tell the truth to, who will listen, not try to fix, but a lot of people, Dr. Winter, don't have that, for many reasons. And so I'm grateful for that, and definitely getting rest and sleep. And um, so all of these things I resonate with.
Well, in those vacations, you just came back from the Dominican Republic with
Yeah,
a group of sisters.
yeah, we started. I started in 2023 what I call sisterhood retreats. And the whole purpose of it is rest, renewal, and reclaiming joy as our birthright. And it's Black and brown women who, we travel next year, Dr. Winter. We're going to Belize. And we're going 2 places next year. We're going to Belize and we're going to the DR again. But on those, it's not like a retreat, where you work and then you rest a little bit. No, this is all about resting and connecting with each other. Relationships, people who have come on these retreats who didn't know each other now have lifelong sisterhood friendships, and they do, it's a beautiful thing to watch, but that's healing for us. It's healing.
Yeah, and so I want to just kind of toss it back to the book real quick. In the context of Song of Solomon, that may be a romantic relationship that's kind of going on there, but the deal is that the sisterhood, and in some cases brotherhood, lifelong friends, people you can depend on, people you can trust, can help you through some of the tough times.
That's right.
And then maybe it's not a tough time. Maybe it's just something you want to do for fun that can just relax you. Like you said, it's a retreat. That I know some people, they want to go to Fiji and just sit in one of those houses that's on top of the water.
Huts, yeah.
Yeah. So so there are plenty of examples where you can rest, get peace, that not only can help you on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, but things you can do daily. Daily eating right, daily resting, daily exercise, if that's your perspective. From a health perspective, we know it's recommended. Daily reading good books. I'm actually reading a book right now. I'm going to hold on to it for a second, but I really think it's going to make a difference for me in how I get to move forward in life. So that there's just a plethora of options where we don't have to let the foxes be in our vineyard.
Yeah, at least not let them remain, because, they're going to come, but we can get them out.
That's correct. That's correct. Do we have any questions, Dr. Irie?
Hold on, let me see. I don't see, okay. Let me just shout out Jasmina Green. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. I don't see any questions on Facebook. Let me go over to YouTube. Nope, I don't see any questions.
Okay. Well, I just want to point out one additional thing that from a womanist perspective, we call self-care is a radical act of survival. And so this slide here is a representation of the radical act of survival. When the world could be going all crazy around you, you need to, I'm going to use this word, protect your peace. And that is a radical act of survival because there's so many things and challenges that could come your way that you and others might just need to step away. And sometimes I remember this movie, and I know most of us do, but where you go into your closet and close the door, and most times those closets are dark. Even if they have a light in there, you don't turn it on because you just want peace, you want quiet in that little space for that moment at that time. So any thoughts there, Dr. Irie?
Well, when you said that, that made me think of that scripture that says, guard your heart, for out of it flow the issues of life, or it is the wellspring of life. That's what that brought to my mind. Yeah.
All right, great. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
You could go through it all. Yeah. So I'm gonna. I got the first question there. I think I actually got that out of the book. How does mutuality and love contribute to balance in life? But I'm gonna actually go to the second one. It says, how does balancing career and church life contribute to building a legacy? And I drew this picture in the context of saying one individual, you or me, or whatever terminology you want to use. But how does that go against, can you balance that with your family, with your church, with your job, with the community responsibilities? And that mutuality and love, how does it contribute to life? And so we get some scenarios, and I'm not saying all, but some scenarios, and I'm just going to be blunt, where people take advantage of you. They don't care if you're sick. They calling you in the hospital. How you do this? Or where is this? Or where is that? It's like, hey, hold on. I'm in the hospital. There's a reason.
Yeah.
I'll tell a little something on my nephew. He called me. I was actually in Belize, and he's like, "We don't have nothing to eat."
Oh
I
my
said,
God.
"That's not my problem." I know there's some peanut butter and jelly in there. I don't care if you eat it with a spoon. If you don't have no bread, that's your issue, not
He
mine.
called you in Belize.
He called me in Belize to tell me they didn't have nothing to eat. And I knew what I left at home.
They ate it all up. That's funny.
But balance, what does that look like? Do you have what's that where again, protecting your peace, setting boundaries? What does that look like in terms of balancing your life?
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing when I was gonna say knowing when enough is enough or enough is too much. But what I've learned, Dr. Winter, is if we wait till it gets to be too much, we've waited too long to set boundaries, right? Around our time or whatever. Because
Mm-hmm.
if it's too much, you waited too long.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about knowing when you sense, and one of the things I always say is pay attention to your body, because our bodies alert us to a lot of things. But so often, I think particularly as Black women, we have been socialized to not really pay attention to our bodies. We don't know how to do that, you know. Many people don't. I know I did not. I did not.
What did you do to get to a point where you paid attention to your body?
I
What
don't
what
think
what was there a turning point? Was there something that what
there've been a few turning points. One major turning point was I was hospitalized for kidney stones and dehydration in 2018. And I didn't know that what was happening to my body was because, like, the pain that I was feeling in my body was because I was dehydrated. I didn't know that. I attributed to like anxiety, but no, your organs need water and you're depriving it of that. And so we're it's like gears grinding, you know. So that got me to drinking more water, right, to take care of the hydration piece. But then there's another aspect of my body that alerts me that I've learned to pay attention to over time. And it's not anything, Dr. Winter, that I intentionally said, okay, I need to learn how to. It just, I think because of reading and just the things that I had just been learning over the years have helped me to understand that I have intuition and I have instincts that I can trust, right? So I've learned over time to trust my own knower. and make decisions no matter what other people say on the outside of me. If my body, if I'll give you an example. Someone several years ago had this opportunity. They wanted to hire me, right, to work for the organization as a consultant, right?
Okay.
And initially I was, okay, let's meet. Let's meet. And when we met and we sat down and we were talking and they were talking and telling me, all about what they wanted me to do, it's like my body just was like, mm-mm. I couldn't. And this was someone I knew, that I loved, that I respected, but my body was saying, and I learned, because I had learned to pay attention to it, I declined the offer. And all I'll say is, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I listened to that, right? And so, but that has been a learning experience for me, learning to trust myself, learning to trust my knower.
Well, and if I could say, potentially creates anxiety. It changes your blood pressure when you are in scenarios when you're like, why am I sweating? What is going on here? Right?
Yeah,
Your body sometimes does tell you, but you don't pay attention because we are, some of us, I need to change them, accustomed to trying to say yes and trying to please people. And
yeah,
some of that people pleasing lands
yeah,
us in the hospital. Some of the people pleasing kills us.
absolutely.
And some of the people pleasing uh, uh, challenges our mental faculties.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been delivered from people pleasing. In fact, I don't know if I ever was like that, had that, because I've always kind of been like, I'm gonna kind of do what I want to do, you know. Um, and maybe a little insensitive at times, But yeah, it can do all of those things when we're betraying ourselves, you know, and our bodies know that we're betraying ourselves.
Right, right, right. And so in the case to deal with this particular chapter around balance, and we have to know what that looks like. We have to know when the family and all those responsibilities is too heavy and it's taking us in a direction that we that could be damaging to our physicality, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, uh,
And the same way with work, right? When is work putting the family at risk? When are the things that we've committed to putting the family at risk? I remember when I was working on my MDiv, and Indy, my daughter she was still in elementary school. And there would be times I'd be in my office and I'd be writing, in the zone. And she's the only child. Um, I raised her as a single mom, even though her dad was in her life and is still in her life. He wasn't in the home. And so I'd be in my office working and writing, and then she'd come in there in the room and she'd just scoot over and sit in my lap, like while I'm typing. And
mhm,
I would stop what I'm doing and I would give her some attention and talk to her and listen to her and 10 minutes, and then she's happy, she's going on, right?
right,
Because
right,
she
right.
but for me, even though I want this master's of divinity, and I got to get this paper out, but she was more important to me, and her well-being and her emotions was more important to me. And so that was me not that having that balance.
That's having that balance, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, especially seeing Indy now and what she's doing and what she's accomplishing, and having you in her life to show her what balance look like.
Oh, thank you.
For sure, for sure. All right, so that thing that we just started talking about was how can balancing spiritual commitments with personal and professional aspirations create a life of wholeness. And you just shared that. Thank you. Right on time.
Hmm.
Uh, so let's go to the next slide. And one of the things I looked at it when I was thinking about balance and thinking about this chapter, this book, it actually made me stop. And I was like, wow, I wonder did Dr. Weems even think about this? Because in the book, it talks about he and she.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about the patriarchal, I get it. But my question that I had was, where are the LGBTQ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how do you tell the story, the narrative, and expand it to include that demographic, right?
Yeah,
And of course, that's 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 additional work. That's our work. That's our work to do that.
yeah. I mean, I
And
sat
you
with,
just did it. And you just did it tonight by asking the question, who's missing?
yeah.
That's what womanists do.
And so when you think about it, it says womanist theology challenges normative and patriarchal interpretation of scripture, what creates the space for LGBTQIA plus individuals that are
Mhm.
affirmed and celebrated. When you look at this text, that is not a known entity to bring forth that segment of the population.
Mhm.
And we as LGBTQ, uh, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is not necessarily looked at as being whole,
Mm.
looked at as being, oh, well, Annie's over there. She can handle that.
Mm.
Annie not doing nothing. Well, hold on a second.
Mhm.
Annie got a love life. You just don't know about it.
Okay.
Annie need to rest. She going to Belize. Or this week, Phoenix.
Another way of another challenge to expanding the text has been, and we talked about this when we had Dr. Weems, when we interviewed her for that first or second exploration, that often this text is preached and taught as if these two people, the Shunammite, right, and her lover, were married, right, in
That's
the
correct.
context of men. But that was not the case. And
Right.
so that's part of the heteronormativity. That's part of the problem. But when you look at them as two single people who are intimately and sexually um, involved, that that can open it up for other people, because single people are left out of this narrative.
That part.
Even even single cis heterosexual people are left out of this narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's, being, I think, being open to seeing what is really there is two people who are not married, who are having these escapades, these
Well,
adventures.
they're enjoying one another's company.
They absolutely in the most intimate way,
Right.
right?
And loving themselves no matter the color of their skin.
Absolutely. So there is lots of room for LGBTQIA plus folks in this text.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This just
Yeah.
gives everybody the opportunity, whoever watches this, to
Yes,
reimagine the text and
that's it.
include themselves,
Absolutely.
give themselves permission
Mm-hmm. Yep. To love and be loved.
to love and be loved. I like that. Thank you for adding to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that it shows is, to your point, that they're not necessarily married, but a chosen family, a chosen a relationship to be involved with.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, it wasn't forced. It doesn't appear to me in the text that it was forced upon her
Right, right.
or him.
Right. Yeah, she sought it out. She pursued it.
Mhm.
It was, and to me, that speaks of agency. There's something that I want. I want my lover. I want, I want, and I'm going to find it. Now there are challenges and there are problems that showed up, that Weems
The
talks about.
foxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I like that that her agency is elevated, is
Mhm.
lifted up in the text.
What other questions do you have, Dr. Irie, as a result of balance, whether or not it be in the Song of Solomon or in the context of just life?
Hmm. Whew. I don't know, Dr. Winter. I don't know.
Well, I know one of them for me was how to get it, because I'll use the word exposed to working a lot,
Hmm.
and so when do you take time to just relax?
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so if you have 2 and 3 jobs because you are and you're married and you got kids and you're helping with the church and you're helping with the community because of elections and all of these other kinds of things, um, if if you don't get rest, sometimes you will be sat down to rest.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, when it's all of that, sometimes we must ask ourselves, if we want balance, why am I doing all of this? What is it? Is it to really ask ourselves the hard questions and answer the questions, like allow ourselves to tell ourselves the truth about why we are overloaded? Is it about our worth and value? Do we feel like, people won't think we're smart or productive, or, where does all that come from? Why are you doing all of this? What's it for? What are
Yep.
you trying to gain?
Right.
So sometimes it's about asking ourselves hard questions.
Acceptance could be one of them.
Yeah.
Does a person define love by doing all of these things?
Hmm.
The suffering, uh, you know, I'm gonna give to the church.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give to the church, but then you can't pay your bills.
Hmm.
Is it the you want to be accepted? You want to be loved? I mean, there's a whole series of questions that could, or in some family members' case, they're giving all their money to their child or to this relative in hopes that they'll get better, but then
Mm.
they are sacrificing their lives as
Yeah.
a result of that. So, what does that look like and why?
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Irie, I don't think I have anything else except for to say that from when I look at this chapter and it talks about balance, and we think about social social, social justice movements and Black women flourishing and things like that, we at some point have to make ourselves be the center of the circle.
Mm.
And get that balance, because
Yeah.
if we don't, there could be other serious consequences of existing that we don't want to place ourselves in. And
Hmm.
so again, putting ourselves at the center of the circle can help just to have fun and laugh for a moment,
Yeah.
which is the
Yeah.
reason why I go to WNBA games and play golf and things of that nature. And every now and then I get a massage.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to stop the share now. Appreciate the wonderful, thought-provoking Bible exploration. We will see all of you next month. I don't have the book here because Dr. Winter and I are on location. And so my library is at home. I don't know what the next chapter is or who's leading it. It might be me. I don't know. But
Well, I
we'll,
can tell you the next chapter. Give me a second.
Okay.
Next chapter is choices.
Oh,
Choices.
that might be me. That sounds like something I would say yes to. So we'll see everyone next month, and we just pray that you will have more balance in your life. Amen and ashe.
Amen.